the chess, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, so as you guys know, I'm an Astros fan and they won the World Series last night. Yes, man, it was I actually watched the entire game, man. It was a really nice game, man. It made me really happy. I've been an Astros fan since I was a little kid, back in the early '90s. So, like, I had to wait a long time for us to get a championship. If you're a Yankees fan, you get them every couple of years. So you ain't gotta wait very long. They haven't had one since 2009, but I mean, they were literally winning them like pretty much for the last 100 years or whatever like that. So you guys don't need any more. Anyways, man. So we are here for the chess, though. So we do have the Global Chess Championship, and we have the absolute final. We got Wesley versus Nihal Sarin. So they have games today, and they have games tomorrow. So I'm going to do my best to try to get as many games to you as possible from today. So this is the first game that they played with each other. And it's actually a really nice game. It has like a lot of, meat and potatoes in it. So, kind of a lot of stuff I can show you guys, man. So, for all of my people that are coming from the Philippines, I will say mabuhay to you. Kamusta aking makaibigan. Let me see. Masaya akong makinig muli. I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. Anybody who is coming from India, I will say namaskaram to you. And Nandi for coming by and taking a look at my stuff. If you are coming from Kerala, I appreciate you guys very much. But if you guys are ready to go, man, let's take a look, see what we got for this game. So we got the move E4. We got E5, knight to F3, knight to F6, all very standard, stuff. And we do have the Petrov's defense, which is also known as the Russian game. So we got knight taking E5. So we have like all mainline stuff that's going on right here. We got knight takes E5, D6, knight back to F3, knight takes E4, D4, D5, bishop D3. This is like absolutely probably the most standard way you're going to see this opening played. And then we do have somewhat of a side variation. It's bishop to F5. It actually gives white really a lot. You have to be kind of careful when you play like this as black because, I mean, if you are not absolutely doing things with like, the speediness, you can get into some trouble on this open, E file. So we do see castles by white. We got bishop to E7 by black, which you really kind of have to do. Like I said, I mean, if you allow castles and rook to E1 and you start attacking this knight and pinning it to the king, you can get in some really big trouble. So we do see rook to E1, but bishop E7, like I said, is like you really kind of holding things down. So the knight does have the ability to move. We got castles by black. We got knight B to D2. Knight goes up to D6. We see knight down to F1. I mean, you don't really particularly want the bishop to take here, and then you take with your pawn. Yeah, you're going to be controlling some center squares, but I mean, it's a really, really ugly pawn structure to have. So we do see knight to F1 in case bishop takes. We got queen takes, which is what we actually are going to see in the game. We got the move C6 by black. Bishop goes to F4. Bishop takes D3. Queen takes D3. So you see that everything is covered. You have nice structures on both sides. I mean, both sides are fairly even. So it's really anybody's game at this point. So we do see the move a knight to A6. And this can be a little bit, bothersome sometimes, if the knight does come into B4. Not particularly in this situation. I mean, you normally have like C3. The queen does have the ability to move, so it's not like you're getting forked or anything. But a lot of times, you are thinking about, just bringing this knight back here to C7. We do see the move knight to E3. We got knight back to C7. Like I said, we got B3. B3 is, setting up for the move C4. If we can get C4 in and, let's say black takes and then pawn takes here, you actually have the ability to create a passed pawn. So, I mean, black has to be kind of careful that they're not, playing into your plans. So we do see knight up to E6. Of course, attacking this lonely bishop on F4 at the moment. So the bishop does come up to E5. We got the move F6. And this is the novelty of the game. Now, it doesn't like severely weaken black or anything, but the thing that you do have to be paying attention to is the fact that now behind this bishop, this knight is very underdefended. It's actually undefended completely. So after we see the move bishop going back to G3, this knight is loose. So, I mean, if black is not paying attention that their knight is unprotected, we could see knight to D5, and after pawn takes, we're just taking, a knight, and we got a pawn for that. So, that is why in this position, we actually see knight back to C6. And then we have the move C4 I was talking about earlier, hoping that black just says, bro, hey, let's go ahead and do this, man. But then you do this, and, I mean, you have a really nice pawn center. You see that the bar raised up. I mean, you are hoping to try to push this pawn here. and establish a pass pawn on the d file. So black is definitely not going to do that. After we see the move c4, you know, black just calmly plays queen to d7. Like, I'm not giving you none of that stuff, dude. So we got rook to e2, preparing to double on the e file. We got rook f to e8. Rook a goes to e1. So, you know, once this knight moves from e3, I mean, we kind of have a nice hold on this e file if we're white. So we do see bishop back to f8. We got the move h4. We got the rook a to d8. And then we have the move h5. And I mean, you know, this might look kind of strange. Like, why am I just tossing this pawn up here? You know, you're kind of keeping these pawns a little bit more, you know, stationary when you're pushing a pawn up. But I mean, the fact that you have all these pieces in front of the king and all these pawns and stuff like that, like the king is actually not in any danger at all. So, you know, you do have the ability to start pushing this h pawn. Also, you really don't want to change too much in your position because you have your rooks placed on really nice areas. Your knights are nicely developed. Your queen is in a good spot. So, I mean, you don't really want to change too much about the situation. So, throwing a pawn is kind of a little something, something. So, we do see the move queen over to f7. And we have actually reached a pretty interesting point because, I mean, like I said, you are pushing this pawn up. Now, black is like, bro, you know what I'm saying? I'm trying to see if I can munch on some pawns, right? So, we actually do see the move a4 as white. So, we have actually reached a pretty critical position, and you have to have a certain thought process if you're black going on right here. But if you do want to pause the video and not only try to guess what move or moves you should play in this position, but also what your mentality should be, go ahead and pause the video and do so. Okay, cool. So, I think as far as the situation is concerned, I had a few people that didn't notice the danger, and they decided to go ahead and take this pawn right here. The problem is, so before we get into that pawn grab, okay, the thing that you need to be making sure of, and that you have to be thinking about is, you always want to make sure that you pay attention to undefended pieces in your position, but you also want to make sure, like, to take a step up, that you're paying attention to, you know, the under-defended pieces in your position as well. And what piece would that be? Okay, so all right, so we got, like, you know, 2 pieces protecting this knight. You know, we got all the pieces protecting this rook. I mean, you know, the queen is protected multiple ways. So it's like all these pieces are protected a lot, right? But what piece is not protected very much? This knight over here. Literally, if this queen moves somewhere, the knight is undefended. So you have to be paying attention to this if you're black. And if you did, so to get into that move first, if you did guess the move queen takes h5, then you would have fallen for Wesley So's trap. You see the bar goes crazy. The problem is now you are looking at the move c5. And, you know, white has just taken advantage of the fact that this knight was undefended, if not for the queen. And you basically were able to deflect the queen if you're white. And now the knight has to move. And the knight can't move here to protect this knight. So you're going to be losing an entire piece. So, like I said, you have to be double, triple checking to make sure that when you are trying to grab a pawn, that it's not dangerous to do so. Going back in the position that we had, after queen went to f7, we saw the move a4. You have to recognize this, and there are a few different moves that you can make. I mean, there's knight to a6, recognizing that knight is undefended. You have rook to d7. You have even rook to e6, just preparing to double. But absolutely under no circumstances do you want to move your queen off of that rank because of this knight. So, I mean, like I said, it's one of those things where, I mean, it looks pretty appealing, but I mean, you have to be thinking, you have to get yourself out of thinking about grabbing material and be thinking about, you know, what can I try to do to make sure that my pieces, you know, and this is kind of like what we're talking about as far as coordinating pieces. You know, it's not very good coordination if you go grabbing pawns and you got this knight basically hanging after the move c5. It's kind of short calculation, but you have to have the right, like, understanding and thought process going on to be able to see that. Anyways, going back to the move a4, in this position, so if you did guess any of those knight or rook moves, then you would be correct. Queen taking h5, you got to make sure that, like I said, you are paying attention to, like, undefended or underdefended pieces in your position. We see the move a6 by Nihal Sarin. Nihal's like, bro, I recognize all that stuff, man. I'm not going to, like, fall for that trap. So that is what we see in the game. We see knight going to h4, and then we see pawn taking c4, pawn taking c4. And, I mean, even though the position has kind of changed somewhat, you still have a different variation of the same thing I mentioned before. In this particular position, instead of pawn takes c4, if you did have queen taking h5, you would see the move c5. You would be seeing knight to e4, bishop taking c7, queen taking h4, bishop taking d8, rook taking d8. So you would not be losing a piece in this particular variation, but you would be losing an exchange. And then you have a really nice pawn structure if you are the white side of the pieces. So, I mean, you know, even though you're not losing an entire piece, you're still in a much worse position if you're black. So don't go in and do that. So after we saw this, we saw this. So, I mean, this is a much better position for black to be in than the position that we just got done seeing. So we do see the move knight to e6. We got the move c5. The knight goes back to c8, and then we see knight e to f5. And this might look kind of like weird because, like, can't I just take this pawn here and exploit the pin on the queen? You actually can, but I mean, white's position is so far superior that, I mean, that pawn really doesn't even matter. Literally anything on the queen side if you're white is immaterial. Like, I don't care about none of that stuff over there. The attack is on the king side. So we do see knight taking c5, queen just sliding over to f3. And I mean, basically, I mean, white is just taking full advantage of this open e-file with their rooks. So we do see rook taking e2, queen taking e2. And then now the knight has to get out of danger, so it takes on a4. But like I said, everything over here from this side of the board over literally does not even matter. We see the queen going over to g4. And so you see what I mean. I mean, it's like, dude, you got all these pieces over here hanging out. You have no knight over here protecting anything. I mean, you know, you have this entire e-file taken over. So, I mean, the immediate threat right now is the fact that knight can come to h6 with check, forking the king and the queen. So you have to do something about that. So what Sarin decides to do is to go queen to d7. And we have actually reached another point in the game, another gets the move. If you do want to stop the video and try and find the move that Wesley So played here, go ahead and do so. Okay, cool. So, it is a gem. And I think actually, I mean, I don't really feel like I would have found this in the game. I mean, it's really complicated to think about this move. But the move is actually knight to g6. Now, you might be thinking, okay, why am I just throwing my knight right there next to that pawn, right? Well, the thing about it is, black really absolutely cannot take this knight, because if you do take right here, you got pawn taking. And you guys saw my video yesterday. I was talking about that pawn being all in, you know, white's throat. You know, you really don't want a pawn on g6 if you're black. I mean, it completely restricts your king, completely almost. So that's one of the problems. But that is actually what we see in the game. Going back to the move knight to g6, I mean, there really isn't a whole lot better. The computer literally says that you have to sacrifice your queen on f5 to, like, avoid death. Because, I mean, what do you do if you're black? You absolutely cannot move your bishop anywhere, really. Because you have to protect this pawn. I mean, that's checkmate. So, I mean, there's just really nothing that you can do. Like I said, if you go bishop to b4, I mean, you're looking at knight g to e7, and I mean, you're threatening checkmate. And it's like, what do you take? The queen has to take right here. Like, you know what I'm saying? That's not where you want to be at. So going back, like after the move knight to g6, you are thinking about trying to take away this bishop as well, just to, you know, take away the protection of that pawn itself as well. You're threatening knight to h6, removing the pawn, and then going something like this, and then, I mean, you know, just double checking, and then you're checkmating on G. Like, there's just so much crap in this position, dude. So, like I said, to probably try to simplify it, Nihal Sarin said, bro, I'm just going to try to go into this endgame. I'm going to try to escape and run away to the queen side or something like that. So the pawn took g6. We did see knight going to e7, but we did just see rook taking e7. And I mean, like I said, you're threatening queen to h3 and then checkmating and stuff like that up here. So, I mean, what do? We actually see queen taking e7 in the position. Knight taking e7 with check. Bishop taking e7. And then we do see queen taking on e6 with check. And, or queen going to e6 with check. Sorry. And, I mean, you're getting mated. Either in one move or three moves. If you decide to just say, screw it, I'm going to go over here, that's just automatically checkmate, as you guys see. If you decide to go over here, you're going to be looking at queen to h3 with check first. The king would slide over. You would see queen to h7. The king would slide over. And then you see queen to h8 with checkmate. And that is all she wrote. So in light of that, Nihal Sarin does resign the game. So that is the end of that, man. So like I said, maraming salamat aking makaibigan. Nandi if you're coming from India. And I will see you guys next time.